And also in this context, we invite Ermelinda Malcotte, who is an international analyst, to go deep into the real consequences of what is taking place today in the region. Hi, Ermelinda, and thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Ermelinda, we have been seeing how this escalation of conflict is impacting not just Iran and Israel, involving both of those countries, but also how it has implications for the rest of the entire Middle East region. What are the real implications? How could this really further escalate in the region?
Well, it will depend on the attitude of the United States and, of course, the Zionist entity. If the support of the United States is just sending arms, and or if it will be direct military implication with United States soldiers, etc. So it really depends on the United States side, because what Iran has always been saying is that they don't want war, and they would make military attack if they are forced to, which is the case now, but they always have preferred diplomatic solutions of the conflict. So it really depends on the United States position, and it is not clear, because we have seen, as always with Donald Trump, the president saying on one hand that it wants to go all war with Israel against Iran, and on the other hand he wishes to continue negotiation about nuclear facilities in Iran and so on. So it has that very strange discourse that he has always had, contradictory discourse. So it's difficult to know what would happen. It not only depends on Donald Trump's position, but I think mostly also on the contradiction that exists in the United States between the warmongers like Rubio and some more negotiating and diplomatic position of others like Tulsi Gabbard and so on. So there are some contradiction into the United States, but what we know is that the discussion is open, as you said, between Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. It might help to go to a more diplomatic and negotiated solution, but also Israel is a big uncertainty, because they act on a very crazy way, actually, because so yes, from the part of Iran, we have the wish to end the war and not to escalate too much, but from the part of Israel and from the part of the United States, it's really not clear.
Video message earlier on Saturday morning saying this old narrative that Iran poses a threat for Israel's sovereignty. On your opinion, is this the real intentions of Israel, or what are the intentions laying behind these terrorist action performed against Iran?
No, Iran has never been a threat to the sovereignty of Israel. But what is at stake today from the part of Israel is ending with the Islamist revolution of Iran. This is really the objective, is some kind of very extremely violent color revolution, and they want to decapitate the regime in Iran. So this is what is at stake. Iran is not a threat, and there is no way they can justify a preventing war that doesn't exist in international law. What exists is a preemptive strike, which is responding to another strike that is coming. It is absolutely not the case. And Iran was into negotiation with the United States about its nuclear enrichment, and Iran has always stated that they don't want nuclear weapons, because they have different reasons, moral reason, but also geopolitical reason not to develop it. And Ayatollah Khamenei always said that if the existence of Iran is not threatened, they would not go for a nuclear military program. So it's absolutely not a threat for Israel. But what Israel felt is that Iran was getting stronger and stronger because of its diplomatic strong alliance and contacts with other countries in the region, but also with China, with Russia, and with multipolar world, the BRICS, the Shanghai Organization. So they were very wanting to attack Iran before it began too strong. I think this is the main objective, and they want really to decapitate the Islamist revolution in Iran.
And Israel is trying by all means to hit nuclear facilities in Iran. And I wanted to ask you, what could be the consequences for the civilian population in nearby zones, but also in the country as a whole and the region, if one of these nuclear facilities is really impacted and destroyed?
Well, what the case in Iran is that nuclear facilities are heavily protected, not only by airfield defense, but also they are protected in the sense that they are on mountains, very on the ground. So they have like an environmental protection and also the military protection. And we have seen that it has been protected so on. Even the beginning of the attack yesterday, they made a cyber attack which has disabled a lot of the aerial protection, but still with that disability, Iran was able to protect its nuclear facilities. And there was a little bit of leaks, but very nothing important. So for the moment, Iran is protecting very well its nuclear sites. But of course, we have always seen that Israel has they don't care about civilians and they target them, so they will go for it. But Iran still has very good protection, and even if the military protection doesn't work, they have the environmental, the mountains, and the fact that the sites are very on the ground, behind the ground, so it's very good protection for the sites.
Is there any foreseeable de-escalation of hostilities between both countries? And in the opposite, what could mean for the entire humanity a massive escalation and perhaps the involvement of third countries in this conflict?
It's difficult to say because it depends mostly on the Israeli side. And sometimes in war, sometimes escalation is not the worst, in the sense that if it is a de-escalation for a next war, it is not. Sometimes it's good to set the force correlation and say, okay, if Israel understand that they cannot go further against Iran, maybe they can calm down. So desescalation is not always the best thing. Iran has to prove its strengths and its deterrence, and it's proving it now. But it has really to make a point with Israel. So I think that they would follow a little bit more the strikes on Israel to prove that the deterrence, which they didn't make with the previous responses on the last month, year. So this is one thing. And if escalation go on, if, for example, if Israel strikes on very heavily and Iran has to respond again and again, it might involve, I mean, we have seen that Yemen has been involved in the conflict since the beginning of the genocide against Palestinians. And we don't know what would happen from the part of Hezbollah in Lebanon, because they have been heavily distracted by the Israeli strikes like last year, but they might respond. Also, we have also see also in Iraq authorities saying that they won't allow the Israeli strike to go on the Iraqi sky, which it doesn't mean that Iraqi government will react, but it means that they are allowing probably the Islamist resistance in Iraq to be active, and they won't go against them. So we are seeing that axis of resistance is putting into march to defend Iran and to defend the anti-imperialist force in the region. On the bigger side, we have Russia that have some strategic alliance with Iran. So they are, for the moment, discussing with Donald Trump and trying to de-escalate. But they don't want a conflict in the region, obviously, and neither China. But they understand that Iran has to prove its deterrence. So they understand that Iran has to strike Israel very strongly to make the point that it's not possible to go at war. So yes, the cards are mostly in hand of Israel, and will they stop? And it depends on various factors. In the case of Israel, on international factors, but also internal factors, because Netanyahu is in a very precarious position in the Knesset. So it might also be a way for him to save him. So it's very complicated situation, very uncertain for the moment.
It is indeed. Ermelinda, you mentioned Palestine, and I wanted to ask you one last question. In the meantime, as we speak and as this escalation unfolds, the genocide against the Palestinians keeps in motion. Do you think that this aggression could be an attempt from Israel to invisibilize the extermination of the Gazan population?
It's an objective, whatever happens. I mean, it's they want to end with all Palestinians in occupied Palestine. This is a ultimate objective of the Zionist regime. And what happened now is that they're on an expansion phase. Sometimes they just stay in the territory they are, and sometimes they're in an expansion phase, and it is clearly the case. So it's in the Gaza Strip, but they're also attacking a lot of Palestinians in the West Bank. They are also attacking Lebanon. They have resumed the attacks on Lebanon. They are occupied lots of territory in Syria, so they're on an expansion phase, and the expansion in the Zionist mind always means genocide and extermination. So yes, they will end, if they can, they will end with everybody in Palestine, unfortunately. This is the project of the Zionist entity.
Thank you very much, Ermelinda, for your time here with us to try to help us go through all that is going on in the Middle East at this hour. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me.
We were